It's the Hero Show. Welcome to the Hero Show, starring the indefatigable John Hersey and the irrepressible Andrew Bernstein. I am Andrew Bernstein, and you are indubitably John Hersey. How you doing this morning, John?
I'm great. I'm super excited because today we get to interview a very special guest, Daryl Davis, a boogie-woogie pianist and an author, a speaker, and an ambassador for racial harmony. Daryl, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to have you on the show.
Hey, thank you, Andrew and John. Really, really appreciate it. Glad to be here.
It's great. It's great to have you, Daryl. First of all, just being a boogie-woogie pianist and playing with the superstars that you played with, like B.B. King and Jerry Lee Lewis, and you played with Chuck Berry.
42 years.
Wow. I mean, these guys are legends, and so that's impressive in and of itself. But when I first heard about your exploits with the Ku Klux Klan, I mean, it's like my jaw hit the floor. I could hardly even believe it. So your role in helping Klan members throw off this racism and brutal racism that they hold is just fascinating. How did this all come about, Daryl?
Well, I've always been fascinated with it, and I was exposed to it for the first time at age 10. But you need to have a little bit of background on me first to understand how I went in that direction. My parents were U.S. Foreign Service, State Department, so I grew up as an American Embassy brat, living overseas a lot of the formative years of my life. And you get assigned to a country for 2 years, and then you come back home here to the States. You're here for a few months, maybe a year, and then you get reassigned to another country abroad. And this started for me at the age of 3 in 1961. So I'm 62 years of age now. And when I was overseas in the 60s and early part of the 70s, my classes over there in elementary school and things like that, kindergarten, were very diverse. My classmates were Nigerian, Italian, German, French, Russian, Japanese, Swedish. Whoever had an embassy in those countries, all of their kids, we all went to the same school. And we didn't have that back here in the States, of course. So when I would come back home after my dad's assignment, I would either be in all black schools or black and white schools, depending upon if I was going to the still segregated or the newly integrated schools. Even though segregation, Brown versus the Board of Education desegregated schools in 1954, it didn't happen overnight. It took, years. So one of the times when we came back, I ended up in Belmont, Massachusetts, a suburb of Boston, and where I was one of 2 black kids in the entire school. This was 1968, and I was 10 years of age. I was in 4th grade. There was a little black girl in 2nd grade. That was it. So consequently, all of my friends were white. And many of my guy friends from the school were members of the Cub Scouts, and they invited me to join. So I joined, had a lot of fun. And on one particular day, we had a march from Lexington to Concord to commemorate the ride of Paul Revere. And everything was going along smoothly. It was the Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Brownies, 4-H Club, and some other organizations in this parade celebrating the ride of Paul Revere. And everything was going along smoothly till we reached one point where several people off to my right, I remember there being a couple of kids, maybe my age, a year or 2 older, and a couple of adults who were throwing things. And I was getting hit by bottles and soda pop cans and things like that. And because I had never had that experience before, my first thought was, oh, these people over here to my right, they don't like the Scouts. Because why would I think they're picking on me? And it wasn't until my scout leaders came rushing over and protected me. They like hovered over me and escorted me out of this danger. And I kept, then I realized I'm the only one getting this special protection. Nobody else was getting this. And so I kept asking, well, why are they hitting me? I didn't do anything to them. Why are they hitting me? And all they would do was just kind of, shush me and rush me along, telling me everything would be okay. And so later that day, I got home, and my mother and father were like cleaning me up and putting Band-Aids on me and stuff, and asking me how did I fall down. and get all scraped up. And I told them I didn't fall down, told them exactly what had happened. And this was the first time that my parents had ever sat me down and explained what racism was to me. And believe it or not, at the age of 10, I had never heard the word racism. I had no clue what they were talking about. And it made absolutely no sense to me whatsoever because of my experience having grown up with people all around the world. And nobody had treated me like that. So the color of your skin has nothing to do with anything. Why are you telling me this? I did not believe my parents. My 10-year-old brain could just not wrap itself around the idea that someone who had never seen me or never spoken to me and knew nothing about me would want to hurt me. It just made no sense. And so I didn't believe them. Well, within 2 months later, the same year, 1968, on April the 4th, Martin Luther King was assassinated. And nearby Boston burned to the ground. Every major city in this country, my hometown, Chicago, where I am now, Washington, D.C., you name it, they all burned to the ground in the name of this new word that I had learned called racism. So then I realized, my parents had told me the truth. They weren't lying. This phenomenon does exist. But while I accepted its existence, I still did not know why. Why do people hate? And because of the color of skin. So at that age, I formed a question in my mind, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And now I've been on a quest for 52 years, because I started at age 10, to find out the answer by forming a question in my mind, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me?
That's a very rational question. So John, I know you have, I know you've worked out some good questions for our guests. You want to fire away?
Yeah, well, one of the things that struck me when I started to learn about you is just the role of music. We hear about music being the universal language, and it has the ability to bridge the gap between people. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role of music in your life and how it's helped you to bridge the gap between people and counter racism.
Sure. Okay, so I have my degree in music, in jazz from Howard University, performance, and I've been a professional musician since graduating college in 1980. But let's look at music for a second. Okay, so today is Friday, and let's say I'm off. I don't have a gig today because of lockdown or whatever. But let's say I want to go out dancing, and so there's a club that features bands or a DJ or whatever music, and they have a dance floor. So I go to the club, and I'm there by myself, and a good song comes on. The dance floor is filling up, and I want to dance to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look around the bar or the club, whatever, and see if I see a single lady by herself, unattached, and see if she wants to dance. So I spot somebody sitting at the bar, and she's there by herself, not attached, and she's like tapping on the bar with her hand, in time to the music. So obviously, she likes the song too. So I don't know her, but I want to walk over there and say, hey, you want to dance? She goes, yeah, sure. She pops off her bar stool, and we go out to the dance floor, and we're dancing together. Now, if it's a slow song, we're wrapped around each other and just, turning slowly on the floor. If it's a fast song, we're apart and we're shaking around or whatever. At the end of the song, I'm going to escort her back to her seat. And I say, hey, thanks for the dance. My name's Daryl Davis. And she says, her name is Mary Smith, whatever. And so I say, so what do you do, Mary? And she tells me she's vice president of marketing for Microsoft on the East Coast. Whoa. I mean, that's mega bucks, right? And she says, what do you do? And I tell her I work as a cashier at McDonald's. Where do two people, one making, $500,000 a year and the other one making maybe $9,000 a year, where do two people that far apart come that close where we're dancing like this and don't even know each other? Music was the key. Everybody likes music. Whether you're in the Klan, you're a neo-Nazi, you're a Muslim, a Christian, a Jewish person, a Mormon, whatever. Everybody likes music. And so, yes, music is the universal language. It brings you together. So that was just a hypothetical example. Now, I'm going to show you a real example. When some years back, country music, which had gone away for a while, or not, I mean, it never went away, but it fell off the top 40 charts. But it made a resurgence. A movie had come out called Urban Cowboy with John Travolta and this mechanical bull and all these line dances, right? So it was so popular that most of your nightclubs and bars and stuff that were doing top 40 and disco and whatever else at the time switched their format over to country. And so, if you wanted to work full-time, which I wanted to do because I'd graduated with my degree, I didn't want to do anything else but play music, I joined a country band. And I like country music. It's very easy to play. It's basically the same as the blues, just 3 chords, and maybe a 4th chord every now and then. And I joined this country band that was pretty well established in this area. And I was the only black guy in the band, and usually the only black guy anywhere where we played. Well, they had played a place up in a town called Frederick, Maryland, about a little over an hour outside of Washington, D.C. And they had played there, regularly. And so now I'm in the band, and I'm going to play there with them. Well, this place was called the Silver Dollar Lounge. And the Silver Dollar Lounge was known as an all-white lounge, not meaning that people like me could not go in, but simply that people like me did not go in. And that was by their own choice. And it was a good choice because they were not really welcome in the Silver Dollar Lounge. And, when you go somewhere where you're not invited or not welcome and alcohol is being served, it's not always a good time. So, here I was in the Silver Dollar Lounge. And we had finished a set of music. We're taking a break. And I'm walking across the dance floor to go sit down with my bandmates. And I felt somebody put their arm around my shoulder. Now, I don't know anybody in this joint. So I'm like turning around to see who's touching me. Because I see the whole band walking up ahead of me. And it was this white guy, maybe 15 or so, maybe a little more years older than me. And he says, "Man, I sure like your all's music." I said, "Thank you." And I shook his hand. And he pointed at the stage and said, "I've seen this here band before, but I ain't never seen you before. Where'd you come from?" And I explained to the guy, "Yeah, they told me they played here before, but I'm new. I just joined the band." He goes, "Man, I sure like your piano playing. It's the first time I ever heard a black man play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis." So I was not offended by his statement, but I was rather surprised that this guy, being older than me, how come he didn't know the black origin of Jerry Lee Lewis's music? He should have made that connection long before I did, because he's closer to that heyday of Jerry Lee Lewis. And he says, I said to him, "Well, where do you think Jerry Lee Lewis learned how to play?" He says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I learned from the same place he did." I said, "Black, blues, and boogie-woogie piano players. That's where rock and roll and rockabilly came from." "Oh, no. Jerry Lee invented that. I ain't never heard no black man play piano like that, except for you." So I'm thinking in my mind, this guy, has he never heard of Little Richard or Fats Domino, And anyway, I assured him that I wasn't pulling his leg. I said, I know Jerry Lee. He's a friend of mine. And he's told me himself. And the guy didn't believe that either. But he wanted me to come back to his table. He was going to buy me a drink. And he was that fascinated with this, because I was like a novelty to him or something. And so I went back to his table, and I ordered a cranberry juice, and he paid for it. And then he took his glass, and he clinks my glass and cheers me. And then he says, "This is the first time I ever sat down with a black man and had a drink." And now I'm totally mystified. How can this be? I'm 15, 18 years younger than he is. And already in that period of time, I had sat down with thousands of white people or anybody else and had a meal, a beverage, a conversation. How is it that this guy had never done that? And innocently, I asked him why. And at first he didn't answer me. He stared down at the tabletop. And I asked him again. He had a friend sitting next to him who elbowed him in the side and said, tell him. And I said, "Tell me." Because now, is this a big secret or what? And he looks at me and he says, "I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan." And I burst out laughing at him because I thought this was a joke. I know a lot about the Klan. And they don't just come up and hug you. And if you're black or whatever, and want to invite you to their table and hang out and buy you a drink and all that kind of stuff. So I'm laughing, like it's a joke, and he goes inside his pocket, pulls out his wallet, and flips through it, and hands me his Klan membership card. And I recognize the symbol on the card, a red circle with a white cross and a red blood drop in the center. And it's called a Mayoke. And I stopped laughing because, it was for real. So, I gave it back to him. And we discussed the Klan and a few other things. But he gave me his phone number and asked me that I call him every time I come back to this bar because he wanted to let his friends know to come see me. He wanted them to see this guy who played piano like Jerry Lee, a black guy at that. And so I'd call him every 6 weeks or so. And he'd bring his friends, Klansmen and Klanswomen. And some of them I would meet on the break. So I'd always go by his table, say hello. And then some of them, they would see me coming and they'd get up and scurry off to another part of the room because, they didn't want to touch me or, get that close to me. They just wanted to look at me. While others hung by the table, they were curious and wanted to talk to me and stuff. So that went on for a while. And then at the end of that year, I quit that band and I went back to playing rock and roll and whatever else was going on. And it dawned on me a good while later, Daryl, the answer to your question that's been plaguing you ever since you were 10, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? It fell right into your lap. Who better to ask that question of than someone who would go as far as joining an organization that practices hating people who don't look like them and who don't believe as they believe. Get a hold of that guy and get him to hook you up with the Klan leader and interview that guy, and then go up north, go down south, go to the Midwest and the West, and interview other Klan leaders and members and write a book about it. Because there had been no books written by black authors on the Ku Klux Klan. Mine was the first, from the perspective of sitting down face to face and interviewing them. There had been 2 books written by black authors, each one dealing with the Klan, spoke about them, and how each author escaped a lynching, one in the 1930s and one in the 1940s, but not from the perspective of sitting down face to face, questioning their prospective lynchers. And that's what I wanted to do. So that's how that started. I contacted the guy. He provided me some information on how to reach the Klan leader, and he didn't want his name associated with it because he was afraid that if the Klan leader found out that he'd given me this information, there would be some serious consequences. And he advised me just to drop it, not pursue this. That this Klan leader, would kill me. And he begged me, not to tell the guy where I got his information.
Now, Daryl, it's a fascinating, it's amazing. The Klan leader was Roger Kelly, right? Was that what?
That is correct. Yes.
So I think of this adventure as Roger and Me, after the Michael Moore film. So you actually met with Roger Kelly and his bodyguard. And that sounded like it was quite a meeting that first time, and then what evolved from it is just an extraordinary story. So I think our listeners would love to hear your meeting. Was he like some kind of imperial wizard? I know they give themselves these exalted names. But
right. I'll give you the hierarchy, how it works. Okay. So today, there's no such thing as the Ku Klux Klan. There used to be the Ku Klux Klan, one Ku Klux Klan group. It was centralized, and then chapters of that one group spread out amongst different states, etc. Today, it is decentralized. There are many, many Ku Klux Klan groups, but not the Ku Klux Klan. You might have the Dixie Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, the Confederate Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, the Rebel Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, on and on and on. These are all separate, autonomous groups. Now, they all believe in the same thing. They wear the same colors on their robes that designate their rank. They use the same, more or less, constitution for their group. They have the same secret handshake, the same passwords, the same, like I said, colors on their robes, etc. But they are autonomous. Now, if you see these groups together, which is rare, they will hold a united front. But behind closed doors, they are rivals with each other. They don't like each other. Each one thinks, we're the real Klan. That's a wannabe Klan kind of thing. Okay, so now, if you have your Klan in your state, and you can have multiple clans in the same state. Like I said, each group is autonomous. If you have your Klan in your state and you establish a chapter of your Klan in another state or in multiple states, you may then consider yourself to be a national Klan. Therefore, you must have a national leader, who oversees all the states in which you have a chapter of your particular Klan. So like we call our national leader the president. They call theirs the imperial wizard. Anybody who is prefixed with the term imperial means that person is a national officer. Wizard is the top, like president. An imperial caliph is like a vice president. Okay, so now that wizard oversees all the states in which you have a chapter. Now you have to designate a state leader, which we would call the governor. They call that person the Grand Dragon. Anybody prefixed with the word grand is a state-level officer, dragon being the top. A Grand Caliph would be like a lieutenant governor. Then within the state, you have counties. The county leader is known as the Great Titan. So the great level is the county level. Then within the county, you have districts, or what they call claverns. And a district leader, which we might call a mayor, a councilman, alderman, selectman, something like that. That individual is known as the Exalted Cyclops. And at each level, you have secretaries and treasurers and all that kind of thing. And then just your plain white-robed Klansmen who don't hold any office. So at the time that I met Mr. Kelly, he was a Grand Dragon. And then, through the time, that I interviewed him and things like that over the years, he rose to the rank of Imperial Wizard.
Oh, so he became the national leader.
Yeah, he became national leader for that particular Klan group. And now, the guy had given me Mr. Kelly's information on the condition that I not tell Mr. Kelly where I got it. I said, okay. So I gave it to my secretary, who was white. And the only reason I mentioned that because I could care less what color somebody is. But I mentioned that because it's important to the story. I'm the one who had Mr. Kelly's phone number, and so I could have called him myself. But I figured if I called him, he might, detect in my voice that I'm black and say, I'm not talking to you, click. And my whole project of wanting to interview people, would have ended right there before it ever got started. But I knew that if my secretary called him, he would know by her voice that she's white. And he would not automatically assume that this white woman is working for a black man. That just would not register, especially a black man who's writing a book on the Klan, because they did not exist. Mine was the first. So that's why I wanted her to call him. And I instructed her specifically, do not tell him that I'm black. If he asks, don't lie to him, but don't even allude to it. So she understood, and she called the guy. And now another reason is this. I was already told that this guy was would kill me or whatever, and stay away from him. And so I didn't want him to know that I was black because he might turn down the project. But in the event that he did know, because he asked and she told him, I figured that if he agreed to do the interview, knowing that I was black, that he would have different answers for a black interviewer than he would give to a white interviewer who's asking the same questions. So I wanted it to be spontaneous. So she called him, spoke with him, and said, would he consent to sitting down with her boss and interviewing about a book on the Klan? And he didn't ask what color I was, and he agreed to do it. Okay, so she and I got a motel room. In fact, it was the same motel in which in the basement was the $Silver Dollar Lounge. So we got a room upstairs. And we got there like several hours early, and I got the room, and I got some soda pop and put it, and I had Mary put it inside the ice bucket, get it all cold and stuff. And we waited. So right on time, it was a Sunday afternoon at 5:15 was the time. there's a knock on the door. Now, the room is situated such that you have to come in the room and go around the corner before you can see who's in the room. So I sat in the most obscure corner of the room, so you really had to come in the room. And I put the lamp table over there, took the lamp off, and put a chair on one side for me and a chair on the other side for Mr. Kelly. And I had a black canvas bag beside my chair leg, which contained a cassette recorder, which I set in the middle of the table so I could record the conversation, provided he'd let me record it, and provided that he would stay once he saw me. And I had some blank cassettes, and I had a copy of the Bible all inside this bag. So now, why did I have the Bible? Because the Klan claims to be a Christian organization, thus why they use the cross. And they claim that the Bible preaches racial separation. So in my reading of the Bible and my interpretations, I never saw anything in there that indicated that. So I wanted to be able to, pull out my Bible and say, here, Mr. Kelly, please show me chapter and verse where it says blacks and whites must be separate. So I'm all prepared, right? Right on time. Knock, knock, knock. And so I'm seated back there. Mary hops up and runs around the corner and opens the door. And in walks what is known as the Grand Nighthawk. Nighthawk means bodyguard, and of course, Grand means state level. So the Grand Nighthawk would be the bodyguard to the Grand Dragon, like an Imperial Nighthawk would be the bodyguard to an Imperial Wizard. So this Grand Nighthawk walks in. He's dressed in military camouflage with that same Klan patch, the Mayoke, right over here, the initials KKK on this side, and embroidered on his beret cap, it said Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. And he has a semi-automatic handgun in a holster on his hip. And he comes in, and Mr. Kelly is walking right behind him in a dark blue suit and tie. And the Nighthawk turned the corner and saw me and just froze in his tracks. And Mr. Kelly did not realize that this guy had stopped. And he slammed into his back and knocked this guy forward. And so now they both are unbalanced, and they're stumbling around trying to, regain their composure and their balance. And I'm just sitting at the table, looking at them, watching them trip around. And they're like looking all around the room, and I'm reading their faces, and I'm realizing what's happening, the apprehension. They're thinking, did the desk clerk give us the wrong room number? Or do we mishear it? Or is this an ambush? So I stood up and I displayed my hands to show I had nothing in my hands. And I walked forward. I extended my right hand. I said, hi, Mr. Kelly, I'm Daryl Davis. And he shook my hand. And the Nighthawk shook my hand. So far, so good. I said, come on in, please. Come on in, have a seat. So they came in. Mr. Kelly sat down, and the Nighthawk stood at attention to his right side. And after showing him my ID and all this stuff, I sat down because he asked me to show him some ID. So I did. And I sat down. I asked him, would it be okay to record the conversation? He said yes. So I reached down in my bag, pulled out my cassette recorder, put it there, and began recording. And every time, he would make a reference, a biblical reference, or my cassette ran out of tape, I'd reach down and pull out a fresh cassette or pull out the Bible and hand it to him. Every time I reached down into this bag, the Nighthawk would reach up to his hip, and his hand would be on the butt of his gun. And I understood that, that's his job. He has no clue what's in my bag. He doesn't know me. So he's there to protect his boss. And so after a while, he realized, there was no threat inside the bag. And he stopped moving every time I reached down. So this went on, pretty smoothly for a while. And maybe a little bit over an hour, we were just talking like we are now. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, a very fast, short noise occurred. That was it. That was the end of it. And we all jumped. It came out of like nowhere. But I knew that he, Mr. Kelly, had made this noise. And I didn't know what the noise was. And I flew up out of my chair, hit the table, because I'm getting ready to come across that table and attack them. And the reason being because there was no reason for this noise to occur. And so, because it was so short and so quick that it ended that quickly as soon as it started, that my ear could not discern what it was. So instantly, given the situation, A, I'm black. He's a Klansman. All right? The other Klansman or whatever had told me, don't fool with him, he'll kill you. So I got all this going on in my head. And so I knew that he made the noise. How did I know this? Because I didn't make it. So if you don't do something, you blame somebody else. And because things just don't happen, in a vacuum, somebody has to cause it. So I knew he had made this noise, and because I could not discern what it was, I perceived it to be threatening, ominous. And so I'm ready to defend myself, because when I feared for my life. And when you fear for your life, you go into what's called survival mode. And you do whatever it takes to survive. Some people, they pass out because the fear is so great, their brain cannot process it, and it shuts down, and they faint. You've seen people, faint from being scared about something. Other people, their muscles will constrict and tighten up, and they can't move. Even though you're hitting them, they can't even block and deflect your blows. That's called paralysis by fear. I don't do either of those first two things. I don't faint. I don't freeze up. The next thing, or another thing people will do, is to run away. And that is your best option. As quickly as you can, separate yourself from the source of fear. Go in the opposite direction. Self-preservation. That's exactly what I would have done if it had been available to me. But there's no outrunning a bullet in a motel room. I was not armed. Mary was not armed. The only person who I knew for sure who was armed was the Nighthawk, because I could see his gun on his hip in his holster. I did not know if Mr. Kelly had a weapon up under his suit jacket or not. So the next option you have is to do a preemptive strike. In other words, get them before they get you. And that's exactly what I was going to do. I was going to pounce across that table, grab both Mr. Kelly and the Nighthawk, and slam them down to the ground and disarm the Nighthawk. And when I hit the table, I'm just within inches of his face, and because he's just on the other side of this little lamp table, and I'm looking into his eyes, and I did not say one word to him. My eyes were speaking for me. My eyes were saying, "What did you just do?" But his eyes were talking to me as well. He didn't say a word, and his eyes were saying to me, "What did you just do?" And the Nighthawk had his hand back on his gun again, looking between both of us like, what did either one of y'all just do? And so Mary was sitting to my left on top of the dresser because there were no more chairs. And she realized what had happened. And she began explaining it to us when it happened again. The ice in the ice bucket next to her had begun melting, and the cans of soda were shifting down the ice. That was it. We all began laughing, all of us, at how ignorant we had been. Now, this was not, I won't say this was a learning moment.
It was an icebreaker, Daryl.
Yeah, it was an icebreaker for sure. But how ridiculous is that? Because somebody almost got shot over an ice cube, So, the learning would come later, but I would say that this was a teaching moment. And here's the interesting thing. When we realized it, we all began laughing. All of us began laughing at the same thing. And in a way that was humanizing one another, showing that we all have that same emotion of fear. We all can laugh at something that was funny. So it humanized us in the moment. Can you imagine a Klansman and a black person enjoying a laugh together? But it happened. And so, like I said, the learning would come later as you process it. But what I found is the lesson taught is this. All because some foreign, and underscore, highlight, circle the word foreign, entity of which we were ignorant, that being the bucket of ice and cans of soda, had entered into our little comfort zone via the noise that it made, we became fearful of each other and accusatory of each other. So ignorance, if not kept in check or addressed, escalates into fear, because we fear those things we don't understand. And the fear makes you become accusatory. You blame other people and stuff. If you don't check that fear and address it, that in turn will escalate and breed hatred. And the hatred turns into anger as it escalates. If you don't check that, that escalates to destruction. We want to destroy the things that we hate. Why? Because they frighten us. But guess what? At the end of the day, they may have been harmless, and we were simply ignorant. So we saw that whole progression stop just short of the end being destruction. Whether he pulled out his gun and shot somebody, namely me or my secretary, because he's there to defend himself and his boss, or had I pounced across the table and hurt one of them, doing my job, which is to protect me and my secretary. So it stopped short of that destruction level. However, we all, including you guys, we all saw that whole scenario unfold right before our eyes 3 years ago on August 12th, 2017, in the city of Charlottesville, Virginia, which is about 2 hours from where I'm sitting right now, where there was a large white supremacist rally. And on that day in Charlottesville, there was a lot of ignorance. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of hatred. And what did it culminate in? It culminated in destruction when a white supremacist got inside his vehicle and tried to murder as many counter-protesters as he could by driving it full force into the crowd. And he succeeded in injuring 20 people and murdering one young lady named Heather Heyer. So ignorance breeds fear, fear breeds hatred, hatred breeds destruction. That's the lesson taught and eventually learned.
Yeah, Roger and me turns out to be quite a story. And before, John, let me just follow up real quick. So some of these Klansmen that you've spoken with, Daryl, and can I say befriended?
Sure.
So some of them quit the Klan, right? Some of them, the ignorance was dissipated when they got to know, a black man close up and personal, not just whatever ignorant idea they had in their head. So you've actually had a role in showing Klansmen that this kind of hatred is irrational, and have had a role in these guys leaving the Klan. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. And here's how it works. Okay, we spend in this country, way, way, way too much time talking about the other person, or talking at the other person, or talking past the other person. If only we would spend some time talking with the other person, that would go a long ways to solving many of the problems we have, not just racial, but many other areas as well. Okay, so how do we do that? We trip over ourselves and defeat our own purposes by allowing our emotions to get in the way of our goals. They get ahead of us before our goals and stop us from achieving them. And what do I mean by that? Let me tell you something. Between traveling with my parents abroad as a child in the U.S. Foreign Service, combined with my travels now as an adult musician, I have been in 57 different countries around the world on 6 continents. So I've been literally exposed to a multitude of colors of skin, ethnicities, cultures, religions, all that stuff. And having seen that stuff firsthand, lived in those countries or performed in those countries for audiences of that, all of that has impacted me and my perspectives on people. And I can tell you something. No matter how far I've gone from this country, whether it's right next door to Canada or Mexico or to the other side of the earth, India, Israel, Finland, France, Germany, to perform or whatever, no matter how far I've gone or how close I've gone, when I come back, to my own country, and I think about the people that I've met and the cultures that I've seen, no matter how different they may be, at the end of the day, I conclude one thing. They all are human. And that being said, I also realize that everybody around the world all want the same basic 4 or 5 things. They want to be loved. They want to be respected. They want to be heard. They want to be treated fairly. And they want the same thing for their family as we want for our families. So as long as we can understand those 4 or 5 mandates, if you will, and realize that people are human beings, we can navigate in any society. Any society. You know, we have our differences for sure, but we also have those very strong core elements as similarities, and that's what we have to use when we deal with people who are different than ourselves. We do have those similarities. So here's how it works, and we're going to use Roger Kelly as an example because this is what happened, and it will be repeated time and time again. And years later, when or months later, whatever the case may be, because it's all individual, when they give up that ideology and I end up with their robes and hoods, I find out how it happened. And it's always a similar story. When they first encounter me, their wall is up. You know, when they think, you know, they're walking into a room to see a white guy who's going to interview them, you know, for his book on the Klan. So, you know, the wall is down, everything's cool. But they come in, they see me, woo, the wall goes up because I am not their object of affection, right? You know, that's why they're in the Klan. So that wall is up, and they go on the attack. All right, I'm the inferior, they're the superior. So within 10 minutes of my interviewing this guy, he's telling me, because I'm asking, you know, how can you hate somebody? You know, you don't even know them. All you see is this, my skin color. Well, Mr. Davis, you know, black people are prone to crime, and you know that you can see that because there are more black people in prison than there are white people. That's his justification for that. So that is a half truth. He is correct. There are more black people in prison than there are white people, but what he's not considering is the imbalance of our judicial system that sends black people to jail for long sentences, where white people in the same circumstances either don't get convicted or they don't get sentenced for as long, or poor black people, poor white people who cannot afford adequate legal representation take a plea deal to something that, you know, they didn't even do, and there they sit in the prison. That happens all the time as well. So he's not considering all that. He's looking at what he sees. More blacks in prison than whites. Therefore, blacks are more prone to crime than white people. That's implanted in his head. Then he goes on to tell me that black people are inherently lazy. We don't want to work. We prefer to scam the government welfare system and get as many handouts as we can. And then he goes on to say that black people are not as intelligent as white people because we were born with a smaller brain, and white people have a larger brain. So the larger the brain, the more room capacity for IQ, for intelligence. And he says that is evidenced by the fact that every year black kids score the lowest in terms of SAT scores, you know, than white kids. Again, that is a half truth. Yes, we score the lowest. However, he's not considering the circumstances. Where do most black kids go to school? In the inner cities. All right? But the school systems in the inner cities are not as good. They're not up to par with the schools in the suburbs. So, yes, most black kids, you know, who go to school in the inner cities do score lower than white kids who go to better schools. But I will tell you this, the black kids who go to the schools in the suburbs score just as high, if not higher, than some white kids. And white kids who go to school in the inner cities score very low. So he's not taking that into consideration. He just sees the overall picture. So now I'm sitting here, you know, 2 feet away from him, 3 feet away from him, across this table, listening to him tell me about myself just based on the color of my skin. That A, I'm a criminal, B, I'm lazy, And 3, I got a small brain. I'm not very smart. All right. So now most people would shut that down immediately and go on the attack and push back, either verbally or physically, because you have attacked their their character and their integrity and whatever else. Is what he is saying to me offensive? Yes, absolutely, it's offensive. Am I offended by it? Absolutely not. I'm not offended by it one bit. And why is that? Because why should I be offended by it? It's not true. Why should I be offended by an untruth? This man doesn't know me. He just walked in my room 10 minutes ago. If my parents had told me, Daryl, I think you're prone to crime, or you're kind of lazy, or you're pretty dumb, I might I might take that a little more seriously, because they brought me into this world, right? So they know me, they raised me. But somebody who just met me 5 or 10 minutes ago telling me all this, no. Why should I believe that? So I'm not offended by a lie. And see, that's what I mean by people giving their emotions in front of them and shutting down their whole quest. So don't be offended by something that's not true. That's number one. Now, because, I allowed him, one of those 5 tenements to be respected and to be heard, that wall began coming down, because he's never been able to go more than 45 seconds with somebody who looks like me and use all that insulting language before somebody pops up and pushes back. So now that, I let him go on and on and on. I listen to him. That wall comes down. So now that he's got it all out, he feels compelled to reciprocate and give me a chance to explain, my platform like I gave him. So he's going to reciprocate that respect and allow me to be heard. So now his wall's down. He's vulnerable. I could go on the attack, and I would be justified, rightfully justified, to say, no, you are the criminal. You are the one who's hanging black men from trees and bombing their churches and dragging them behind pickup trucks and on and on and on, right? I could do this. I can prove that, right? But if I did that, what would happen? That wall would go back up. And then I'd be hitting a brick wall. Because when the wall is up, nobody's listening. The ears are plugged. They're shutting you down. So I want to leave the wall down. So rather than go on the offense, I go on the defense. And what I say is, Mr. Kelly, listen, I hear where you're coming from. But let me just give you an example of something. Number one, I don't have a criminal record. Nobody in my family has a criminal record. Number two, I have never been on welfare. Nobody in my family's been on welfare. Number three, I have never measured my brain size, but I'm sure it's the same size as anybody else's. I said, now, in terms of the SAT scores, my SAT scores got me into college. And so now I know already this man barely made it out of high school. All right, so I know that I have more education in my little fingernail than he and his whole clan put together. But I'm not going to throw that in his face, because that would cause the wall to go up. So I just tell him, hey, listen, my SAT scores were good enough to get me into college. I have a bachelor's degree. My mother and father each had master's degrees. My dad was working on his PhD before he passed. So, I'm defending, right? And I'm defending while the wall is down. So he's hearing me. Now, here's the interesting part. He's heard me because his wall is down. When he goes home, I find this out much, much later. When he goes home, he reflects upon, what he did that day. And he thinks, damn, I had a 3-hour conversation with a black man, and we didn't fight. We argued about different things and disputed things, but we didn't clash or whatever. And what he said about such and such made sense. But he's black. But what he said was true. But he's black. So he's having a cognitive dissonance where he knows what I told him is true, either because he knows it to be true or he researched it and found out that, I wasn't kidding, it was true. So, but he doesn't know how to accept it because it came from a black person. And all his life, black people have been inferior. So that's a cognitive dissonance. So it's up to him to make a determination. That's his dilemma. Do I disregard this guy's skin color and accept it as true and change my path because I know it's true, or do I consider the fact that he's black and I continue living a lie, knowing that I'm living a lie? That's his dilemma. And over time, he struggled with that. And over time, even when he got to the rank of Imperial Wizard, he was still struggling with that. And eventually, he made up his mind to go the right way, to accept the truth, and realize he'd been living a lie.
How many Klansmen have you helped leave the Klan?
Just over 200, I would say, directly and indirectly. And I don't say that I convinced them or I converted them. They did that themselves. What I did was provide the impetus for them to think. I didn't tell them, what to think. I just suggested how to think, and let them mull it over. And they would have this struggle that I just told you about, because they would tell me that later. After they quit. So what was the turning point for you? What. And it would be a combination of those things. They kept thinking about some of the things that I said, and they found them to be true. So they struggled with it. And here's an interesting thing. Everybody likes power. Everybody likes power. And once you have power, you don't want to give it up.
What do you mean by power in this case?
Well, being a leader, a grand dragon, an imperial wizard. What does that mean? It means you have followers, lots of followers, a base. Okay, look at the power struggle going on right now, right here where I am in Washington D.C. with our current administration. All right, everybody likes that throne, to be on that throne, to be in that power. So if you just join the Klan let's say you go and join the Klan today, and now you've been in it for a couple of months or whatever. You're just a rank and file Klansman. There's nobody following you. You have all these brothers and sisters who are in the Klan. I don't mean biological, but the Klan becomes your family. It's called a brotherhood, right? But that's it. You don't supervise any of them. You follow your Grand Dragon and your Imperial Wizard and the other officers. But now, over time, you're working your way up, and you get to be an officer. A Cyclops, a Great Titan. Now you're Grand Dragon, so you're in charge of the whole state. All right, and then you go on and you become Imperial Wizard. You're in charge of multiple states. All right, you have a lot of followers. And now you realize that you've been living a lie. How do you tell this many people, hey, folks, listen, I've been leading you down the wrong path. I found out, we're living a lie, and now I'm going to live the truth. Black people are equal to us, or whatever else. That's hard to do, to give up that power, because these people have relied on you. They've looked up to you. So it's an amazing thing when a leader gives up the Robin Hood. If you've only been in it for a couple of months, you've got nothing to lose. If you get out, because you don't really have any following. You don't really have any power.
It would be inspiring enough, Daryl, if this was a white guy who convinced, well, like you said, who gave them the evidence, I think, that they then thought through and motivated them to leave the Klan. But for a black man to do it is very courageous. I think it's certainly heroic. Risk your life when you went to meet Roger Kelly. So it's this, and you helped these people move from irrationality to rationality, from ignorance and bias to more enlightenment. It's enormously inspiring. And the question I have is, there's like free will is at work. People can make choices, right? They can change their mind. So I'm just wondering, and since you've done so much of this, how many people who you think are violent, and just they do bad things?
Listen.
How many do you think can be reached? In the way that, is there a lot of them you think could be reached?
Yes, a lot of them can be reached, and yes, I have met those people that you're talking about. I've put people in the hospital. I've put people in jail who've been violent, who have attacked me, and things like that. that can happen, and you can expect it, because there are those people in those groups. As soon as they see you, they do not like you, and they're on the attack because you're black, because you're Jewish, because you're gay, because you're Muslim, because you're whatever it is they don't like. There's no talking to them. Boom, they're on it. All right, you have people like that, and I've met some of them. You realize that, and there are people like that who can change as well. You don't give up on those, but if somebody is willing to sit down and have a conversation with you, regardless of how adversarial they may be or how hostile they may be, there is an opportunity to plant a seed, provided you handle that conversation right. But at the end of the day, do realize that there will be a percentage of people who will never change. They will go to their grave being hateful, violent, racist, anti-Semitic, whatever. So you don't give up on them, but understand there will be a percentage of them who will never change.
Yeah, people make their choices. People make their choices, right? And
exactly, yeah. And it is a choice. Because I'll tell you something. Here's the thing. I never thought this would ever happen. I did not set out to convert anybody, and I'm still not setting out to convert anybody. I'm setting out to initially I was setting out to find out the answer to my question. How can you hate me when you don't even know me? That's all. I was not planning to become their friend, to hang out with them, anything like that. And there are those who won't hang out with me. Trust me, they don't like me one bit. But my mission was to simply find out, how can you hate me when you don't know me? But then as this thing started happening, where they began quitting one after another, after our conversations over time, I thought, you know what? I need to keep on doing this. So I've got people who mail, believe it or not, I don't even know them, but they contact me on email and say, hey, I heard you on Joe Rogan, or I heard you on whatever, TED Talk, this, that, or the other, on CNN, and what you said made sense, and I'm getting out. Would you like my robe? And they mail it to me. I got a FedEx box of a robe about maybe 2 or 3 months ago. Yeah. So, this kind of thing does happen. And, this is why I continue to do this, to try to inspire people. I don't tell them what to think. Just give them information and show them how to think.
Right.
Well, one thing I certainly wanted to ask you about was your book is... Yeah. It's on Amazon, a used copy for $300+. Are you planning on doing anything with that?
Do not. Yeah, I see those things. People email me all the time. It's ridiculous. Don't even go there. Don't go to Amazon. Don't go to eBay if you want that particular book, because the book is out of print now. I took it out of print, and I may put it back in print. But I just finished writing my second book, and the second book contains all the material from the first book, plus updates and new stories. So you'll get it all in the second book. So right now the second book is going through the editing phase. It'll be out sometime next year. But anytime something goes out of print or out of publishing or whatever, the prices get jacked up. So don't even bother with that. If you really want to read the old book, contact your library. Most libraries have a copy of it somewhere in the system. Check it out and read it for free. The book, the hardback, when it came out in 97, 98, was $24.95. The paperback was $15.95. So, these people are just more or less raping you of your money.
Yeah.
By jacking up.
Let me jump in real quick here, Daryl. I'm fascinated to know, you're like the NAACP who stands up for the rights of blacks. Black Lives Matter, who claims to care about Black lives. What's their? You're actually doing something here that's very beneficial. Do they have any response, positive or negative, to what you're doing?
Okay, yeah, they have both. See, you just mentioned two different groups, the NAACP and the BLM, Black Lives Matter. Okay, the NAACP is an organization. All right. Black Lives Matter is a movement. There's a difference. Black Lives Matter is not an organization. It's a movement. All right? An organization like the NAACP has a headquarters. It is centralized. Policy is created within the headquarters. There's one president, and that policy is disseminated to all the chapters around the country. So now everybody is on the same page. The LA chapter of NAACP and the New York chapter, New York City chapter, they're on the same page. All right. With Black Lives Matter, the founders of it had a great idea, which they got from Martin Luther King, when he did the bus boycott with Rosa Parks, was to put the national spotlight on the plight of black passengers on this bus in Montgomery, Alabama. All right, and because everybody was seeing what was happening, it changed. The founders of BLM did the same thing. They wanted to put the national spotlight on the plight of black men who, for lack of a better term, were being murdered by white police officers for holding their cell phone or holding their wallet or running away or whatever, getting shot in the back, all kinds of stuff. Black men got to go to their graves, where white men in the same situation either went to jail or went home. And some went to jail via Burger King, like Dylan Roof. All right? So you want to put the national spotlight on that so everybody sees what's happening, and then changes will take effect. However, they did not want to centralize, and they did not want to trademark the name Black Lives Matter, which, in my opinion, was a big, big mistake. Now, perhaps at the time, they did not realize how big that thing was going to blow up. Because now you've got 80 or 90 different factions, and not even chapters. A chapter belongs to something. A faction does not. All right, so you got 80 or 90 different factions around the country calling themselves Black Lives Matter. You can leave here right now today and walk out and start your own chapter of Black Lives Matter if you want. So can John, so can I, because it's not trademarked. You have Black Lives Matter factions that contain nothing but black supremacists. You have other ones, blacks and whites working together. Some are predominantly white, and they're all over the map. Some are very aggressive. They want to, tear up the town, yank down statues, spray graffiti all over the place, BLM, this, that, and the other, while others want to sit down with their city or state legislature and try to, get bills passed and do things, that way. So they're all over the place because there is no centralization and not everybody's on the same page. So here's what happens. Let's say the Brooklyn, New York chapter of BLM is doing something great. They're sitting down with their legislatures and getting bills written up together to get passed. While the Queens chapter is going out there tearing up stuff and being aggressive and whatever else. The media does not say the Queens chapter of Black Lives Matter did blah, 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 or the Brooklyn chapter. No, all they say is Black Lives Matter did. So, and when they report something negative, it paints the whole movement with a broad brush. So why should that include your chapter when some other chapter is screwing up? But that's how the media is. And so that's the problem, because it's not centralized. In order for it to be a lot more effective, they all need to come together. But I think it's too far gone now. The horse is out of the gate. How are you going to put it back in and get all these people to come together on the same page? Because again, it goes to power. Each one of these little factions has their own leader. What happens when you have too many chefs in the kitchen? It does not work. You need one president and everybody come together and support, the policy, rather than each president have his own little policy and use the same name, Black Lives Matter. So the best way to defeat your enemy is to divide and conquer, and they are dividing and conquering themselves.
Yeah. But have you gotten any feedback from them? I mean,
yeah. There are chapters. In fact, there are 6 chapters. Mississippi and Laurel, Mississippi. One chapter in New York City. There are several up there in New York City, but one of the New York City chapters. One in Detroit, one in Ohio, and I've forgotten where the other one is. But there's 6 of them that have contacted me and said, "Hey, do you give workshops? Can you teach us how to do what you do?" And then there are other ones who just rip me apart. They want nothing to do with me. I'm a sellout. I'm an Uncle Tom. I'm an Oreo. I'm everything. I'm a race trader. You name it. I've been called every name but my own. So yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah. Right. Wow. Well, I guess it looks like we're out of time. Daryl, I think you're a hero. for risking your life in such a good cause. And so, I certainly salute you and thank you for the work you've done in trying to promote racial harmony in this country and in the world. John, I'm sure you have some final thoughts you want to share with Daryl too.
Yeah, you're an incredible inspiration, and you cited some numbers. You've helped 200 something Klansmen leave the Klan, but I think the impact you're having is just incalculable. And I hope that you really can teach these skills to other people, and I hope that others will learn how to communicate, how to listen, and how to actually make real change the way you're doing. So thank you so much for your work, and thank you for coming on and talking to us.
Thank you both very much for having me and your willingness to to share my work, because that's very inspiring to me. So I really appreciate it, and perhaps we can do it again sometime.
Oh, I'd love to.
Absolutely, Dow. Thank you very much. Your work needs to be widely known, especially since it looks to me like there's people who want to push us into race war, which will be horrible for everybody. And you're working for racial amity, which is a noble goal, to put it mildly. So thank you very much for everything you do, Darryl. We'll try our best to promote it. And I wish everybody to have a more heroic day. Have a heroic day, everybody.
Thank you all. Take care.
You too.